following program on Other Derana 24 is classified for general audience. It is intended for all ages. It contains little or no violence, no strong language, and little or no sexual dialogue or situations.
Tonight, we discuss the features of the 13th Amendment and the effects of its complete implementation. The context through which the 13th Amendment was brought into the Constitution of Sri Lanka in 1987 has been considered to be highly contentious given the terrorist conflict that was brewing within the country. In this backdrop, both the President and the opposition leader has expressed keen interest in the complete implementation of the 13th Amendment within our country. Which elements pertaining to the amendment has been stalled over time? What are the key changes that will occur if this measure is to take place? And how has the 13th Amendment changed the course of Sri Lanka's legal field? All right, welcome to Law, Land and Liberty. We are keeping the promise of bringing in a contemporary legal topic and breaking it down for our viewers. Tonight's topic is going to deal with something that has been discussed both by the key lawmakers, one would say, within our country, that is the President and even the opposition leader, who have now been favorable towards the complete implementation of the 13th Amendment within Sri Lanka. This was highly contentious. This has been discussed, I believe, in the previous election rounds where there was a divided opinion within our country pertaining to this. And again, it has come up to the conversation. Now, the first and most basic question that anyone asks is, okay, why is there a lax in the implementation? What exactly is the limitation? Where are we right now? And to get all of this broken down for us, we have with us President's Counsel Manohara Silva. Thank you so much, sir, for joining me on this conversation. A lot of important things that we need to cover with you. I believe previously we had conducted our discussion on the 21st Amendment to the Constitution, and when it comes to general constitutional affairs, I believe President's Counsel Manohara Silva is one of the most prominent lawyers within this field. Now, sir, generally what we do in the program is we give a breakdown of the segments, but given that this is pretty straightforward, we are going to talk about the 13th Amendment, which was brought about in 1987, if I'm not mistaken. There is no requirement to break down into key areas other than discussing it holistically. I want to give you some time, sir, to really come into how you have really pursued this, because we see you as a nationalistic figure. You have been a stalwart in that camp, and you have really understood what this country needs, and that is why you were part of the process of making a new constitution as well. Having all of those things in mind for the new law students and even people who have really no clear idea of how the 13th Amendment came into play, why don't you give us some context and we can move on?
Yeah, then we need to understand the circumstances under which the 13th Amendment was enacted. Now, you may recall that in 1987, Sri Lanka was somewhat forced to sign an agreement between the government of India and Sri Lanka, which is called the Indo-Lanka Peace Accord. Now, the Indo-Lanka Accord resulted in bringing the 13th Amendment, although it doesn't specifically mention about the 13th Amendment. The primary objective of the Indo-Lanka Accord was to ensure that the northern province and eastern province is amalgamated on the basis of ethnicity. And this was a direct intervention by the government of India. And just prior to that,
that was the final intention.
That is what is expressed in the agreement itself. Right. That they would, on their part, ensure that the LTT is disarmed and that they will surrender their arms. And on the other hand, that the Indian government will ensure that they will not harbor terrorists. That itself was an admission that it was a well-known fact, and I think it is now admitted by everybody, that India gave protection to terrorists and harbored the terrorists, and that resulted in a 30-year-long war, which resulted in many lives and property being destroyed. Now, coming back to the situation under which the 13th, the Indo-Lanka Accord was brought, India brought gunboats near the shore of Sri Lanka. Then they dropped brinjals and lentils, saying that the people of the northern province had to be fed by them. So that is the kind of force that was used on Sri Lanka and compelled Sri Lanka to sign this agreement. And behind that, and immediately after the signing of that agreement, we also recall that this Indo-Lanka Accord was signed while Sri Lanka was under curfew.
Right.
Rajiv Gandhi came to Sri Lanka while the entire country was under curfew. He came, signed the agreement, and we know what happened to Mr. Gandhi also on that day. And that was the opposition that the people of this country had. That was something that was forced on us.
This was about 4 years into the conflict as well.
Correct. Then the 13th Amendment was also brought to Parliament by force, by our own government. You will recall that J.R. Jayawardena, the former president of Sri Lanka, got all his members of his party. He had a 6/5 majority. Resignation letters from his MPs. While he had all these letters of resignation in his pocket, they were compelled to agree. Otherwise, probably he would have accepted the letter of resignation, and the member of parliament would have lost his seat. So that is how the 13th Amendment was enacted. So 13th Amendment, the legitimacy of the 13th Amendment itself is questionable. Having said that, what is this 13th Amendment? Now, the 13th Amendment was for the first time in this country, Sri Lanka being a unitary state, was being transformed into somewhat of a federal or quasi-federal state. Although it was called a unitary state, the unitary label is given, but the character of the state, the nature of the state was converted into a semi or quasi-federal state. Now, all the governments of this country that govern, including J.R. Jayawardena, Mr. Premadasa, Mrs. Chandrika Kumaratunga, who was a pro-devolution president, all of them did not implement the 13th Amendment fully. Right. Of course, the 13th, it is true that the 13th Amendment was enacted by Parliament. Yeah. But why was it that all these presidents, up to date, none of the presidents, ever took steps to implement the 13th Amendment fully? Now, surely if it was something favorable to Sri Lanka, if it was something that our people wanted, surely from 1987 to date, there was no reason why it ought not to have been implemented. So that itself shows that there is a problem with the 13th Amendment. Now suddenly we find the president declaring that I am going to fully, that was the Pongal gift. Yeah. I don't know whether it will be a gift to the Tamil people or to anybody else.
Just to add, there is no mandate for the president to do so, and there was no requirement also. There was no calling.
Precisely, and he just declares that he is going to implement the 13th Amendment, an amendment which was never fully implemented by 5 presidents that govern this country. Now the reason is that President himself, while he was in Parliament, you will recall, always spoke about supremacy of Parliament. Yeah. That our Parliament is supreme, that everything must be decided by Parliament. Yeah. Now what is he saying? Now, under the 13th Amendment, the supremacy of Parliament is totally destroyed, because under the 13th Amendment, to be specific, under Article 154G, statutes can be enacted by the Provincial Council.
Right.
And if a statute is enacted, that law or that statute will prevail over laws made by Parliament.
So the central government will.
So the central
backseat then.
Yes. So you will see that although the president, prior to him becoming the president, was always in favor of a supreme parliament.
Yeah.
The very fact that he is implementing the 13th Amendment will show that he has now shifted his policy from a supreme parliament to that of a subordinate parliament.
Yeah.
Because the 13th Amendment lays down 3 lists.
Yes.
The reserved list, a concurrent list, and a provincial list.
Yes. I want to get into specifics on those lists as well, sir. In this junction, I believe, before we go into our first break, there is a conversation about a 13 plus that was there in the initial stages. And I believe even the even the people that were favorable towards the 13th Amendment did not want it to go to that extent. Leaving the politics of the matter aside, as in whether there is a requirement or a people's aspiration for this, which we haven't seen at all, which has completely been manufactured by certain Western entities. What about that specific aspect? Because now my question here, I want to bring this up towards latter end, but you are part of the process of making a new constitution as well. Is there a requirement to go to that extent, or why did that conversation come about in the first place?
13 plus?
Yeah.
Well, 13 plus is a vague term. Now, one doesn't know when you say 13 plus whether they are going to increase the number of subjects that are allocated to the provincial list or the concurrent list. Well, that could be 13 plus in a way. It could also be that the limitations that are there for a provincial council to have dominance over the government of Sri Lanka to be, those restrictions to be removed.
Right.
So that to enable those provincial governments to break away and have a separate state.
Yeah.
So when you say it is 13 plus, it could be anything. It could be that it's a mere innocently you increase the number of subjects, that would be 13 plus. It could be that whatever safeguards that are now inbuilt in the 13th Amendment to safeguard the sovereignty of this country, to remove that.
Yeah.
So that you enable the provincial governments to break away.
Yeah.
Now that is also 13 plus.
Yeah.
So I really don't know what 13 plus is. Those who advocate 13 plus must explain that.
They need to be specific. All right, sir, I think you opened the window to like a lot of aspects that I need to discuss with you. We'll take a very short break. You're watching Law, Land and Liberty. Stay tuned. Alright, welcome back to Law, Land and Liberty. We are in conversation with President's Counsel Manohara de Silva. We passed the first segment of where we discussed the context of where the 13th Amendment actually came into play within our country. And I'd like to take a few steps further from that point, President's Counsel, on exactly one of the most contentious elements within the 13th Amendment itself, which was the differentiation between the recurrent list, the provincial and the reserved list. The concurrent list, sorry. How exactly was that division made, and is the implementation of it completely, the issues that lie with the complete implementation lying within these lists or outside in terms of provisions? How do you interpret it?
No, I think we need to understand this. The 13th Amendment was not brought as a result of any demand from the rest of the country except the north and east. It was brought as a somewhat of a solution to the national issue from the point of view that some look at as a solution to a problem. Yeah. And that problem was in the north and east when we had this terrorist problem. As a solution to that, the 13th Amendment was brought. So the three lists were prepared. The first list is called the reserved list. Yeah. The second, the provincial list, and the concurrent list, where the reserved list can be exercised only by the government of Sri Lanka. The provincial list the powers in the provincial list are exercised by the respective provincial councils. And the concurrent list, both the government of Sri Lanka and the provincial council can exercise jointly. Now, why did they make these three lists?
Yes.
On the basis that powers should be given to provinces, and although we say provinces, no other province actually asked for it. Okay. It was consequent to the Indian intervention, that it was kind of a mechanism that was put in place as a solution to the north and east issue. Now, the problem is that police powers, land powers, powers relating to archaeology is in the provincial list.
Right.
Now, there are 73, there are about 36 yes. subjects in the provincial council
can be found
list.
In the annexes within the constitution.
Yes. And the concurrent list also has about a similar number. Roughly altogether, it's about 73 subjects.
Yeah. The 36 in the concurrent list.
Now, the issue is a provincial council, especially in the north and east. Now, the issue is we have to be kind of realistic and be truthful with what we. The problem is in the north and east.
Yes.
Now,
so they say.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, that is brought as a solution to the north and east issue. Yeah. So now the issue is, if police powers are given to the north or police powers are given to the eastern province, can this lead to the division of the country? That is one concern that the people have. If land powers are given and the power to control land within the north and east is given totally to the provincial council, can that part of the country be separated from Sri Lanka? Thirdly, can the archaeological sites be destroyed as a result of powers being given on archaeology to the provincial councils?
Yeah.
Now, all this while, the archaeological operations are done by the Department of Archaeology. Now, the moment you give these powers to the provincial councils, they will have the power to legislate and have a law that would be applicable. The Northern Provincial Council can have a law to control the Northern Province. Eastern Provincial Council will have the power to control archaeology. So will the other provincial councils. But
anywhere that could be an issue.
Anywhere, but the problem is in the north and east, you find the most number of archaeological sites, right, which are still under excavation. Yeah. Now, the issue is, there are reports, and daily it is happening, even today. There is a lot of obstruction to archaeological excavations being done by the archaeological department. And the recent incident is in the Kurundivihara area, and it's in court. There is a court case also going on. So the issue here is, if police powers are given, if let's take the police powers first. Police powers are given. What are the powers that are given to the provincial council?
Yeah.
Now, under the 13th Amendment, we will have a provincial police commission and a national police commission.
Okay.
The provincial police commission, headed by the DIG and two others, one is another member is appointed by the Public Service Commission, the other is nominated by the Chief Minister. Okay. Then the Constitution, I will read. I think it's interesting to read the exact provision in the 13th Amendment. This is the list. I'm referring to the Appendix 1 of the Provincial Council's list, which says, DIG of the province shall be responsible to and under the control of the Chief Minister.
Okay.
So the head of the provincial police force, the head is the DIG, will be under the control of the Chief Minister. Now, in the Constitution, it doesn't say that the IGP is under the control of the President.
Yeah. But in this case,
but with regard to provinces, should we politicize this? What will this result in the implementation? So when the President says that he is going to fully implement it, in other words, he is saying that he will appoint, he'll have provincial councils elections, because you can't implement the 13th Amendment without provincial council in the first place, then appoint governors, then appoint chief ministers, and the chief ministers will control the police of that area.
Right. So indirectly, the President is actually controlling. Is the Chief Minister appointment going to be made by the President, or will it be happening through the Provincial Council?
No, Provincial Council, after the Provincial Council election, the party that wins the Provincial Council election will nominate the Chief Minister.
Right. So in that event, okay, so that is not even under the President, then it will be divided.
Yeah, he has no control over the Chief Minister. He may have control over the governor. But the political reality is that when you say, I am going to implement the 13th Amendment, the governors who are appointed may be appointed on the advice of the chief ministers, or at least in consultation with them. Yeah. So the question is that the chief minister will control the police force in that province. Right. Now, let's forget the northern province, eastern province. Let's ask ourselves, do you want the southern province police, head of the southern police, to be governed by the chief minister of the southern province, or for any province? Exactly. Why should a provincial minister have control over the police? Yeah. Now that is exactly what the 13th Amendment is doing. So if you have politicians, 9 politicians, controlling the police force in the respective provinces. Now remember, although there is a national police and a provincial police, the national police is there only to see about national security, the safety of whenever the president visits a province, or the prime minister, ministers or members of parliament, not when you and I go. Yep. Your security and my security will be done by the policemen in the respective police divisions of that province. Yep. If somebody comes and assaults me or take away my property, I will go to the nearest police station and have to make a complaint. Yeah. And the police stations will investigate my complaint. If it is the president, the national police will do. Now, if I visit the northern province, or if I visit the eastern province, or say a person in the northern province visits the southern province, those offences are investigated by those respective police forces which are governed by the chief minister, controlled by the chief minister. Yeah. Look at these words. The DIG of the province shall be responsible to and under the control of the chief minister. Yeah. So that is what the 13th Amendment says. So you can see how dangerous it is to politicize the police force in this way.
Just developing on that areas, what else can we see? I think that's a very important point, I believe, that we need to really note about. Before we go to what else, can I just get a clarification of how are we limiting it right now, given that these provisions are present within the Constitution? How is that enactment being blocked? Is it that a separate act needs to come into play through the state, through the government, through the parliament, in order for it to be enacted? Or how is that being stopped right now?
Article 154(b)(2) of the Constitution says that the governors must act in accordance with the executive powers of the President. In other words,
he's representative.
So in other words, even in the 13th Amendment bill determination, the Supreme Court said, Chief Justice Sharwananda said, that the executive president will have control. Now the problem is that if you leave it to individuals to control, and if the fate of a particular area of a country is controlled by an individual and not by law, then that is dangerous. If you have a politicized police force and then say the president can control it through the governor, will we have faith in such a structure? So the important thing is that the politicized police that is established by the 13th Amendment should be done away with first. Also, you will find that there is something interesting which says that in the province, the national policeman, the national division of the police, they have to be in civil clothing.
Okay.
The uniforms are worn by the provincial police. So, for instance, if I feel unsafe when I go to the eastern province or when I go to the northern province and I have to run to the police, the policeman of the national police will be in civilian clothes. The provincial policeman will be in, of course it says that when they are engaging in duty, they can wear the uniform. So why should the national policeman anyway be in civilian? I mean, it's what an insult to the national police. I'll read that. There shall be one uniformed police force in each province, comprising of members of the provincial division and officers seconded thereto. Members of the national division shall ordinarily be in plain clothes. Be in plain. This is what the Constitution says. Provided that they may wear uniforms when performing any duties. So surely, if some crime commits, surely has he first got to change his clothes before he starts investigating. So that's the kind of law that the 13th Amendment has brought in.
Right. And that is, these are things that they're looking at fully implementing also.
Yeah.
In extension to that, so if we are to take away those specific elements and the politicization of the police, just because we are in that section of this list, are there any sort of positives that you would witness in this that looks into the primary objective of the 13th Amendment, that is the devolution of power for the aspirations of individuals within the North and East? Are there elements that we can actually take in the event we have to move into something new? No,
there are, in a constitution there are good things and there are not so good things, there are bad things. You can certainly extract the good ones from the bad. I'm not saying every word of it is bad. Yeah. You can certainly try to get some of it when we are drafting a new constitution. Yeah. That's a different matter, but what is there now in the 13th Amendment is not something that we can never implement successfully.
Right. I need to talk to you a bit about the land issue as well so that we can get an understanding there. Before that, we'll take a very short break. You're watching Law, Land and Liberty. Stay with us as we continue this conversation with President's Counsel, Manohara. right, welcome back to Law, Land and Liberty. We are in conversation with President's Counsel Manohara de Silva, and we are going deep into the conversation on the 13th Amendment. This will be our last segment, and a few key areas that we have to really get more clarifications on now. We were in the conversation about the reserve list and the concurrent list and the provincial list that has been given. In terms of where we move forward from this point onwards, President's Counsel, I think the viewers would like a clarification on, like, as you mentioned, on the police powers. What about the issues when it comes to land and the archaeological aspects of all of this? How do you really enter into that? Are there some specific clauses that you think that we can criticize here?
Yeah, now say, just to refer one provision, which is, I think, looked at with much suspicion.
Yeah.
Is paragraph 1.3 in Appendix 2. I'll read that. Alienation or disposition of state land within a province to any citizen or to any organization shall be by the President on the advice of the relevant provincial council. So which means if even an inch of land is to be given to a citizen in any province, it must be done on the advice of the provincial council.
Okay.
So in a multi-ethnic province such as the Eastern Province, and in Northern Province where there is plenty of land available, Eastern Province there is land available, where if a citizen wants a block of land, the provincial council must advise the president. Right. The president cannot on his own give any land according to 1.3.
Okay.
Now that is a very dangerous provision because of the demands of certain separatist elements.
Yeah.
That a particular ethnic group should only be accommodated in the Northern Province, and the government should not colonize. I mean, they use the word colonize. I don't agree with that term, but that land should not be given to people of other provinces. Now that has been the disputed issue that has been there even from the Bandaranaike Chelvanayagam era. Even Dudley Senanayake Chelvanayagam agreement, you will find this is with regard to the distribution of land. Right. Now, when you have a clause like this, a citizen in the Eastern Province will find it extremely suspicious that whether he could get a block of land if the provincial council is going to decide whether that block of land should be given to the citizen, that particular citizen or not. Yeah. So if we have the land development ordinance, we have the crown lands ordinance, that governs how land should be given to the needy, not on the ground of ethnicity. Yeah. So the law is there. There is no reason why the president should get advice from the provincial council when there is a law which stipulates and the regulations are placed as to the qualifications in getting land. Yeah. So the law must control and not the provincial council. Yeah. The law must stipulate who is entitled to land and who is not. Yeah. And what is best is for the people who need land should get the land and not according to the wishes of the provincial council. So 1.3 is another contentious area. About archaeology. In the provincial council list, it says ancient and historical monuments and records other than those declared by Parliament to be of national importance are in the provincial list.
Right.
Now the problem is how does the Parliament declare a particular historical monument or ancient monument as a thing of national importance? Because first you have to excavate and then identify the monument. Yeah. It is after all that the gazetting is done. Yeah. and then it is declared as a national monument of national importance. Now the issue is if this is given to the provincial council, the provincial council can enact a statute which will prevent, which will lead to the destruction of these monuments, because the Sansoni Commission report and various other reports have shown that there is an orchestrated attempt to destroy the archaeological sites, so that the political objectives of certain separatist elements can achieve the objectives in saying that these Buddhist sites were nowhere there in the eastern province, and that those archaeological sites can be distributed among various interested parties. Yeah. So there is a big suspicion that these provisions can be utilized by a provincial council to destroy these monuments.
Moving towards a bit of a conclusive note, please refer to any aspects that we couldn't. I think it's very difficult to leave the political element out of this, because the entire motivation behind this amendment had a huge political context, which you explained very well in our first segment. As we move forward, I think you, alongside a few of our eminent lawyers, were capable of coming together to formulate a new constitution, which was in the makings, and then I believe in the recent part is that it hasn't really come to the center stage. Now, from your perspective, in looking at this from a very much nationalistic angle, a majority of the country's citizens, also a majority means a vast majority, wants it to be a single state, a unitary country, and to share the kind of resources that we have without looking at ethnicity. I think you really pulled that really well. As we move forward in terms of either taking in what we can from the 13th Amendment and moving to something new, what are the key reforms that you would see? Because there is a critique about the local governments, the provincial councils, and this tiered, bureaucratic method of governance. Is that something that we need to deal with as of now when looking at reforms, or what are the key things that you would say?
When we are reforming the present structure, the first thing that we need to be careful is to see that ethnicity, religion is taken out of this equation. No land, no job, nothing should be given on consideration of ethnicity, whether you are a Sinhalese, a Buddhist, or Christian, or a Muslim. People who are in need must be given land. People who are in need of a job should be given the job, or people who are qualified and who can best serve that office. Yeah. That should be the criteria. We must now, the problem with the 13th Amendment is that it is a ethnicity-based piece of legislation. Yeah. The whole purpose is, under Article 154A(3), they provide for the amalgamation of provinces.
Yes,
and it is on that basis that the northern province and eastern province was amalgamated some time back on the ground of ethnicity. Now that aggravates the problem that we have in our hand. The moment you try to govern this country on lines of ethnicity, we destroy this country permanently. So what we need to, we must never look at these reforms from the perspective of ethnicity and religion. And that is something that we should be careful in reforms.
I think that's very well put, President's Counsel Manohara Silva. I think there's a lot more we can discuss pertaining to this and the political elements that are there, but unfortunately time has come against us in this instance. Hopefully we'll be able to continue this discussion, and hopefully the leaders of this country will take a decision that is favorable, that is nationalistic, that looks towards the people of this country apart from any other objectives. Once again, I'd like to thank President's Counsel Manohara Silva for joining me on this conversation. I hope you have a great day, and I hope we'll have another conversation soon.
Thank you, David.
All right. Sri Lanka had to undergo severe stress and loss to keep its national integrity and unity. Many people had to make large sacrifices, in some instances even with their lives, to achieve this feat. The first Prime Minister of our country, then known as Ceylon, Honorable D.S. Senanayake, once said, "Irrespective of whether we be Sinhala, Tamil, Muslim or Eurasian, we are one single nation, the Sri Lankan nation. Long live the Lankan nation." That is all from us here at Law, Land and Liberty. If you had missed today's program, you can rewatch the entire episode on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/otherthanenglish. Have a great day.